What stuck out to you about Apple's quarter and Apple's guidance?
Well, what stuck out to me was certainly the weakness that we were seeing in China, which, clearly had been indicated previously when they had dropped the earnings guidance by 8% for the quarter earlier in the month of January. And we've also seen it, obviously, looking at other companies as well. But the thing is, China down 27% year over year, iPhone revenues down 15% year over year. You're still talking about 62% of the company's total revenues. Yes, the other 38% might be up very nicely, and we may have more detail about it, but it's sort of like Captain Smith in the Titanic saying, well, the bow's down, but look, the stern's in the air.
Is it that bad, David?
Well, look at it this way. Management tried to balance out the release by saying services revenue up 19% year over year, 13% of the total, an $11 billion number. And they tried to say, look, by the time we get to 2020, our total subscriptions, they're going to grow from being, essentially about, 300 million, where they are now, up to 500 million. And that would imply a 38% revenue acceleration. But the bottom line is this. If you don't have an iPhone, you're not going to buy the services. So from that standpoint, arguably, if Apple wants to achieve this kind of acceleration on the services side, they have to have a price-competitive product. And we look at the situation in China, their iPhone shipments there have been down for effectively 3 years in a row. Granted, and we're looking also elsewhere around the world that the company with its products, certainly Apple has always succeeded by having premium priced products. They've satisfied the customers. But the bottom line is that their price point is out of line with where the market actually is. And from that standpoint, Apple goes through their annual product iterations. They're going to have to push this iPhone X forward until we get the new product coming out in September. So, obviously it's 8 months between now and then. You're going to have to do a lot probably in terms of price cutting to move units. So Apple arguably for 2019 has to go through a year of transition. Some people would say, looking at other industrial sectors, that a company in this kind of a position would have to do some sort of a restructuring. Apple certainly has the wherewithal to do that. They've got $130 billion in cash. Clearly, investors have been looking for that to be returned to them. But the bottom line is you need to have a competitive business.
But hey, David, quickly on the phone side, because if I go to a store here in the United States, the other phones, unless you get some real cheapo thing, is the same price. Samsung, their main competitor, those phones are about the same price as iPhone, maybe slightly less, but not markedly so. What's that other option that they are fighting against in China that's so cheap?
Well, certainly we could look at Huawei. We could look at other companies that may not be as familiar to consumers, in the Western world. Xiaomi actually is a company whose people's brand, the brand has become more familiar to people. But the bottom line is that, yes, Apple has provided sort of a price umbrella under which other companies could, certainly thrive. But, even if we look at sort of Apple providing a price umbrella, we're still looking overall globally at a smartphone market that has reached points of saturation, and where essentially, growth in sales is dependent upon people trading their phones sooner, not longer. And it's because of this extended trade-in cycle, if you will, for consumers, if phones have become more expensive, that certainly has slowed things down, not just for Apple, but obviously for other vendors, Samsung and others.
Obviously, then you're not recommending new buys to the stock.
Well, I would say that, yes, the stock was up 5% after hours. It was a nice relief rally. Things weren't as catastrophic as feared for the March quarter. But, looking at the bigger picture, as we try to do, things look like there need to be further adjustments made. So, it's not back to the races for Apple. It's just people can sort of sit back, breathe a sigh of relief. But the company obviously has got some blocking and tackling ahead of it.